Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. We're going to break down Cam Coleman. Who better to break down the newest Texas wide receiver than one of the best to ever play cornerback on the 40 acres. We'll let Rod do that here in just a minute. This edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by our good friend Laura Baker. We'll tell you more about Laura Baker here shortly. Rod, let's start breaking down Cam Coleman's game. And the first thing that jumped out when I started deep diving into some of the numbers, you and I have talked about on Football Theory all year, and I know you've talked a lot about on the channel. Hey, Texas needs guys that can win against man coverage. You don't have enough guys on this roster that can win against man coverage. It's kind of been a problem really throughout. I don't want to say a problem, but it's been a concern, let's say, throughout Sark's tenure. But you go to the numbers, Rod, and Cam Coleman graded out with a 79.1 grade, according to Pro Football Focus, against man coverage. 18 targets against man coverage, 14 receptions, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The next highest graded Longhorn would have been Khalil Lockett at 76.7, and that was with only 5 targets against man coverage. Nobody is even close to grading out how good Cam Coleman was against man. So, Rod, what makes him so effective against man coverage?
That's a great point. I mean, I think it is his contested catch ability. He's just so damn strong at the catch point. DBs like me would have hated him, right? I can play sticky coverage on this guy, and it may not matter. I'll give you a couple of stats to back that up, right? So you go look at, first of all, his contested catch ability. We've talked about that. He's 13 of 22, which is a really impressive number on contested catches. When you look at deep contested catches, 20-plus yards downfield, 11 deep contested targets, which is tied for top 5 in the Power 4. Deep contested receptions, got 9 of them. That's the most in college football. And by the way, so it's 9 of 11. It had a drop in there too. But to me, drops in contested catch, that's basically a DB is kind of hanging on you. All right. Trust me, I'm as a DB, I am all in your grill. I'm playing sticky coverage, and yet he can turn a 50-50 situation into an 80-20 situation, and did it over 81% of the time when you threw him a deep contested target. That 81.8% catch rate on deep contested targets, the best rate for any wide receiver in college football with double-digit contested targets deep downfield. So that's what he does really well. I mean, and his frame is elite to 6'3", 200, so he can really shield DBs. The catch radius, the body control does a really good job. So I think for Texas, not only are you going to have that contested catch ability, and like you said, that helps you beat man coverage, because man coverage is meant to be sticky coverage, but also the scramble drill, which I talk a ton about, right? The scramble drill for Texas, I always say that for with Arch has been arguably their most effective weapon, especially in critical moments. Arch averaging over 11 yards per attempt on scramble drill throws, 44% first down rate, over 30% explosive play rate, gentlemen. I mean, that's, and ladies, by the way, listen. Over 50% money down conversion rate. It's a little over 7% of your plays, but you're talking about close to 22% of your 20-plus yard pass plays versus Power 4 opponents come off of that scramble drill. So you talk about now being able to throw it up. Sometimes I love Ryan Wingo, but he's not necessarily great at the catch point deep downfield like that. Now you got a Cam Coleman who's going to be really good with obviously an Emmett Mosley and a Ryan Wingo. The scramble drill is going to be better than ever, and his contested catch ability is going to help you there. He also brings verticality, not only with jump ball ability, but the verticality deep down the field. And Arch loves the deep ball. We always say Arch digs the deep ball, so the Chicks did the long ball, and so does Arch, right? 15% of Arch's, if you go look at it, overall of his throws were deep targets downfield. And I think that number will continue. I think it'll be around 15%, but now I think he'll be more effective. By the way, that was 13th in the Power 4. That deep ball rate, 13 touchdowns. That's 4th in the Power 4. He still is really good throwing the deep ball, even though his targets were inconsistent on those deep throws. He will get more, I think, out of Cam Coleman on those deep contested targets than the Texas wide receivers were able to do this year.
I want to put the deep contested catches into perspective, because that's the one thing, Rod, I think I'm most excited about Cam Coleman bringing to the table. If you go back to 2018 and think about, hey, Texas didn't, I think they were one of the few Power 4 offenses in the country that are Power 5 at the time offenses in the country that didn't have a play of 50-plus yards, but they ate defenses alive in kind of that 20 to 40 range with Sam Ehlinger throwing it to Colin Johnson and Lil Jordan Humphrey. Colin Johnson that year, Rod, on deep contested catches, 10 targets, 6 catches. So remember, as good as Colin Johnson was, He was only 60%. Cam Coleman's over 80%. And Matthew Golden in 2024 on deep contested catches, 10 targets, 7 catches. So as good as we remember those two guys being, Cam Coleman's better. And that's with Auburn having a, let's just say, a less than desirable situation at quarterback last year.
Yeah, that's a great point to give Longhorn fans a bit of a visual to remember because, man, I remember Colin Johnson making Cirque du Soleil catches deep down the field. So I just think that's going to be a big part of it. And, with Sark's offense, it's, he's got a wide receiver friendly offense. He schemes easy completions for wide receivers and, of course, for his quarterbacks. He's known for being able to get scheme guys open in a lot of different ways. And I think Auburn's offense, from what I've watched, they had difficulty getting a schematic advantage and being able to use creativity to get Cam. That's why you got a lot of those contested targets downfield where it's just, you one-on-one downfield, we're just going to throw it up to you. So because of the I would say the lackluster offensive line that they had, and of course the inconsistent quarterback play, they weren't able to scheme him open. Sark will be able to scheme Cam Coleman open. One of my favorite ways to scheme open in Sark's offense is targets to motion. You guys hear me talk about it all the time. That's targeting a player in motion prior to the snap or at the time of the snap. And in this offense, targets to motion, you're talking about completion rates that are probably higher than average completion rates all across the country, right? For Texas, you're over 75% completion rate on targets to motion, almost 11 yards per attempt, 14% explosive play rate, and you're over 50% conversion rate as well on those. That's the kind of stuff you're going to get from Cam Coleman. He's going to be schemed open a little bit easier. We talk about the quick throws, right? The screen game, wide receiver screen game for Sark. How about this number? Cam Coleman, you know how many targets he had behind the line of scrimmage? One. He had one target behind the line of scrimmage. To give you a little perspective, Ryan Wingo had 24 targets behind the line of scrimmage. Now, I'm not expecting them to use Cam Coleman the way they use Ryan Wingo, but there will be easier completions for Cam Coleman. And I do think he'll have an opportunity to show off his yak ability, which is not something we've seen from him. You're going to look at his yak yards. I mean, he is at 2.6 yards after the catch per reception, 245 yak yards. It's in his career, by the way. I mean, Ryan Wingo in 2 years at 717 yak yards. Matthew Golden, that 1 year with Texas, over 300 yak yards. Xavier Worthy had over 1,400 yak yards after the catch in his 3 years here at Texas. That's something also that'll help maximize Cam Coleman's productivity. They're going to get him easier completions, easier opportunities to be able to get those rack opportunities, run after the catch plays with Texas.
All right, Rod, we'll pick up the Cam Coleman conversation on the other side, but right now let's go ahead and thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our good friend Laura Baker.
Yes, we appreciate Laura Baker. This episode of Texas Football brought to you by the accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams. They can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So if you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area, give her a shout today, 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505, or you can reach out at Laura@AndyAllenTeam.com. That's Laura@AndyAllenTeam.com. Thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football.
Rod, I want to stick with Sark scheming guys open just for a second, because for better or worse, trust is huge with Sark. And when he's got guys on the perimeter, skilled guys that he trusts, he's more willing to go into his bag. And I don't know that we saw that as much this year. Like, you go back to 2023, especially once he realized A.D. Mitchell was as good or better than advertised. That's when he really got into his bag. And we know the run game wasn't great this year. There were a lot of other mitigating factors that kind of hindered the offense. But I do feel like we will see Sark at his best, given that you've got all of these weapons. And now you've got experience because Ryan Wingo's played in this offense. Emmett Mosley has played in this offense. Cam Coleman's a veteran. Throw in Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers, and you've got some tight ends that at least have a year in the system. Yes, they've still got work to do on the offensive line in the portal, Rod, but I feel like we're going to see Sark at his best because I feel like he'll have trust in these guys almost from the jump.
I agree with that. And he usually is more creative, the more, diversity in terms of his weaponry. All right. If he got a lot of diverse weapons, he tries to figure out really creative and innovative ways to use them. For example, when He had the backfield of Bijan Robinson and Rojo. He used a lot of the pony package because he's trying to get his best guys on the field and find creative ways to do it. Even that time, we saw 31 personnel package, so he'd break out three running backs on the field because they were so deep at running back. I remember the 6-0 line packages. By the way, we'll get into that. I think the 6-0 line package may come back a little bit. Now you got to get depth on the line to do that, but he used it a lot in 23 and in 22. But what it did, it allowed them to go deep downfield. A lot of times there was those chunky yardage plays downfield they were looking for. They were hunting big plays with that 6-0 line package. So essentially they would just bring them in to insulate pass protection. They were averaging over 11 yards per attempt on throws out of the 6-0 line package in 2023. Didn't see it in 2024 and didn't see it in 2025. But I think Sark could break it out again just because now you have more ways that you are trying to weaponize a guy like Cam Coleman. Another thing you'll see from Cam Coleman just naturally in Sark's offense, he likes position fluidity. He likes his wide receivers to learn every position. They didn't move Cam Coleman around a lot. I think his slot rate 6.4% in his career. He's less than 7%. I mean, the slot rate for Brian Ringo is 27%. Matthew Golden was 23% with Sark. I think the Xavier Worthy slot rate is 31%. He'll move his number one guy around to try to hunt matchups and also give his guy a two-way go. A lot of times it's just easier to put that guy in the slot, can really disrupt the defense when they're trying to key in on one player. And I think he'll also do something that we've seen Sark do when he had Xavier Worthy. I think I've seen him do it more. I don't know if I've seen him do it as much with Matthew Golden, but he knew X-Man was his number one, and we know Cam Coleman's his number one. He would go with these extreme sets, go 3-by-1, force them to defend the player, the formation, and the scheme. And what I mean by that is they got to defend the player. They got to defend Cam Coleman. Now, you want to leave him one-on-one? Good luck with that, all right? Go with God. Probably going put a safety on the top of him, double him, bracket him. Maybe we can even roll coverage that way. All right. But if you do that, that's going to hinder you from being able to stack the box or load the box and from being able to roll coverage toward the strength. So what I would do is I'd go 3-by-1 sets. Hell, you could go 3-by-1 bunch. All right. Mm-hmm. Single receiver should be Cam Coleman on the other side. And then you force the defense to either have to roll coverage to the strength, which is that trip side over there, especially if it's a bunch. Because in bunch, you want to make sure you outnumber the bunch. That's the way you defend it. So you want to go 4 on their 3. All right. And or you with that 3-by-1 set, you can spread them out if you want to. But either way, you're going to force them to either have to make a choice to double team Cam Coleman or to roll coverage to the other side. Yeah. And then the other conundrum you put them in is they got to deal with the run. And you got a +1 advantage with Arch's legs, so they'll always turn every run into a read. And then you got two of the most explosive backs in the country, and arguably the most explosive backfield in the country, and one of them with Raleek Brown and now Hollywood Smothers. So that is the conundrum. If you spread them out enough and get extreme, do you double Cam Coleman, or do you roll coverage to the strength, or do you stack the box? You can't choose all of those things, and you're gonna be wrong half the time.
All right, Rod, any final thoughts, final numbers as we wrap up this discussion on Cam Coleman?
I do think you're going to see him be a better weapon in the red zone. I went back and looked at his red zone targets this season. 10 of them total that I counted, but he was only 2 of 10, 1 touchdown and 10 yards. And you'd think, man, he'd be more productive in the red zone, but you did get 3 pass interference calls. So essentially, out of the 10 targets total, you ended up with 5 favorable outcomes for the offense: a touchdown, an 8-yard completion on first down, and then 3 PIs. I'll take that. That's a coin flip I'll take in my favor every time. So that's something to consider too. Texas will have better ways to and they might want to isolate him, just like I was talking about, to use him in the red zone. And also think on third down. He was when he was targeted on 3rd and 4th down for Auburn. You talk about rounding up to a 42% conversion rate. Texas was at 39% conversion rate on 3rd downs. I believe Auburn was somewhere around 39% as well. Those are not good numbers. Those are below average numbers. But when you throw in at Cam Coleman, he increases your odds for success on 3rd downs, on critical downs. So critical moments, red zone and 3rd down, 4th down, money downs. Cam Coleman also, you could see him weaponized and maximized in a way they just weren't able to do it. They just didn't have the supporting cast around him.
All right, Rod, thank you for the time, the knowledge, and the expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our good friend Laura Baker for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. If you haven't taken advantage of our Portal Madness special over at ontexasfootball.com, there's still time for you to get involved over there on the site. First-time subscribers, sign up right now. Your first month of access is just $1. You can't get anything in this world of value for $1 anymore. We're changing the game over at ontexasfootball.com. Again, new subscribers, first-time subscribers, your first month of access on the website for just $1. So get over there and check out our Portal Madness special right now. For Rod, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.